When I was 12 years old, I was walking home from school through the alleys, and I was held up at knife point. Overcoming adversity taught me how to be creative and resilient and tenacious, but I'm also able to see opportunities that less desperate people might overlook. But then 15 years ago, a profound and traumatic setback happened in my life. I went from being a well-known figure in the industry to being not only off the grid, but under the coffee table that the grid sits on, in the shag carpeting, under the table, picking out Cheerios and sobbing. If I hadn't had that interruption in my life, I don't think I'd be where I am today. Our failure to become our perceived ideal is ultimately what defines us and makes us unique. When you come across as polished and professional and articulate, people just tend to make assumptions about you. And in my case, they'd be partially right. I come from a long line of achievers. My dad ran IEEE and as a doctorate in electrical engineering. My grandfather was president of American Society of Mechanical Engineers and the vice president of KBR, but neither of them were present during my childhood. I was raised by a single mother on welfare in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We grew up in a duplex, my sisters and I, and on the top floor was a Greek family. Every Sunday night, their tradition was they made boiled octopus. I can still smell it. I learned at a very young age how to use public transportation, how to purchase groceries with food stamps, and how to sell wrapping paper door to door. When I was 12 years old, I was walking home from school through the alleys, and I was held up at knife point. I don't think my childhood was necessarily ideal, but I look back on it and feel like I was lucky and fortunate. Overcoming adversity taught me how to be creative and resilient and tenacious, but I'm also able to see opportunities that less desperate people might overlook. From there, at the age of 17, I received a scholarship from President Reagan to attend college, or I would never have been able to go. It was a dream, and I was able to graduate with honors, pursue a career. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I was at the forefront of digital transformation. I was traveling the world in the oil and gas industry, and it was absolutely amazing. But then 15 years ago, a profound and traumatic setback happened in my life. I needed to immediately get a divorce. My then husband was evicted from our home. I needed to quit working entirely. And I needed to stay home with 4 children under the age of 8, the youngest being 6 weeks old. I wasn't ready for this change in my life. I felt like I was completely off the grid. I went from being a well-known figure in the industry to being not only off the grid, but under the coffee table that the grid sits on, in the shag carpeting, under the table, picking out Cheerios and sobbing. This was not what I planned for my life. This was not where I was supposed to be. You know, Nietzsche has a saying, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But he didn't stress that along that process, it's very disorienting, especially if you're someone driven by your career and by success. And that disappointment really stings. So I was in a new world filled with making pancakes, changing diapers, and seeing an awful lot of Barney. And I had to regroup. And I had to think, how am I going to do this? I don't even feel like I'm the best person to raise these children. And I was all alone. But I said to myself, you know what? You are really good at deployment strategies in critical infrastructure. Why can't you create strategies around each of these little humans? What do they need in terms of their educational resources, economic resources, financial, emotional? What do they need to thrive? Build those strategies around them. But all of that action and noise and all those little people in that home, you'd think it would be chaos, but I felt lonely. And there was an emptiness in my home, and I realized that that was an emptiness inside of me. And that's when I realized that I'd fallen for the lies that culture tells us. The first of those lies being that career success is so fulfilling. Well, here I was. I'd had a lot of promotions and raises and accolades. Sure didn't feel that way at that moment. And the second lie is that I can make myself happy. I don't need anybody else. In fact, if I just lose this baby weight, if I run a 5K, if I get another promotion, if I'm going to be happy, I don't need anyone. But you know what? Nobody goes to their grave and says, I made myself happy. Instead, they say what was so important to them was those deep relationships in life and the loss of self-sufficiency. And the third lesson I learned is just the whole lie of meritocracy. The idea that we are each a bunch of skills, and the more you have, the better you have, and you're meant to be leveraged. And if I achieve more than you do, somehow I'm worth more in society. And those were hard lessons to accept. So I found myself in a valley, like a valley of life, right? And I felt like I couldn't get out. It was this valley of disconnection. And we've all been there. I don't feel like I'm somebody unique. We've all been in that valley. But when this happens, you can either be broken or broken open. And we all have that friend that was broken. When something traumatic happened to that friend, they got resentful and angry and they lashed out at other people. But when you're broken open, it's a whole different feeling. That suffering you feel is a great power because it's an interruption of our life and a reminder that we're not even who we thought we were. And that's what I was feeling. I was feeling broken open. And what I learned from this experience is that your path at 22, 32, 42, even 52 is not going to be the same. You know, I had this predetermined. When I graduated from college, I knew exactly who I was going to be, how I was going to get there, and what I would be at each of those ages. And it was absolutely none of those things, right? And the biggest cliche we always hear is, follow your dream. Well, I'm here to tell you that that dream is ever changing. And it's okay. It's okay to say, like, this is a whole new dream. I'm an artificial intelligence. They didn't even have that when I was in college. And now I'm one of the biggest voices. And if I hadn't had that interruption in my life, I don't think I'd be where I am today. Our failure to become our perceived ideal is ultimately what defines us and makes us unique. And if you can embrace the misfortune that you see in your life and make really good choices, your perceived failure can actually become the catalyst for a profound reinvention of you. So work hard, make good choices, and amazing things are going to happen.